Hello, welcome to my channel. We're the guys for photography. Today we are going to talk a little bit about Linux and if it's a viable operating system for photographers. So Linux is an operating system and it's a free and open source operating system. And it's an operating system that usually have a less of an overhead than what Windows or even Macs have. Usually you can get away with less feature-rich hardware on Linux because it's simply a lower overhead. Now, Linux is an operating system that is free and open source. So everyone can download and install Linux for free. There are some versions that actually charge money for the operating system, but basically Linux is a free and open source operating system. When talking about free operating system, what they usually mean is that it's free in it's available for everyone to change the operating system and work on the source of the operating system. And free as in it's GNU. Why would you use Linux as an operating system over, for example, Windows or Mac? There might be many reasons why you would do that, why you would use Linux. Often people say it's because of the privacy options. Other people, or often you can hear that it's because of the low overhead on Linux. And other people simply like Linux better. And then you have people that is really concerned with the proprietary software and only wants to use open source software. So there's many reasons why you would use Linux. And for me, it's two or three reasons. One of the reasons is that it's free and open source. And the second reason is that I find that Linux has indeed a lower overhead compared to Windows. So I usually install Linux. Okay, so that's about the operating system. So now over to the photography issues with Linux. So on Windows, I have quite a few different proprietary software. So on one Photo Raw, Luminar, Neo, Affinity. There's many proprietary softwares that I use. So proprietary software is software that is has a closed source. So no one else outside the development company has the source available to read and to work on. And usually proprietary software costs money, but there are advantages with proprietary software versus open source software, and that's usually that they have a big staff of developers. They have really good hardware available. They have they have a budget when it comes to developing proprietary software. Now, I do love some of my proprietary software or the proprietary software that I use. For example, I do love On One Photo Raw 2022, and I do also love, to some extent, Affinity. So a few of my favorite softwares are indeed proprietary. Now, I could move completely over to Linux software or open source software. It's only that I have a vast library of files that are developed in either Lightroom or on one Photo Raw. So for me, it takes a while before I can move completely over to open source software. Now let's go in and take a look at some of the software that is available for Linux when it comes to photography. So if you watch some of my videos, you know that I use Darktable. To me, Darktable is a really excellent software. Now, some people compare Darktable to Lightroom. I think that's a bit unfair, being that Lightroom, the workflow is completely different than the workflow inside Darktable. And the Darktable has some features that Lightroom simply doesn't have, and Lightroom has some features that the Darktable doesn't have. Personally, I like the way you're doing masking inside Darktable more than I do like it in Lightroom, even though Lightroom has been updated with quite a few features when it comes to masking. I still like the masking in Darktable, and I like the workflow inside Darktable. The only thing about Darktable is that coming from other software and into Darktable, uh, dropping the mindset that you had from, for example, Lightroom or on OnePhoto Raw is hard because you're so used to one set of workflow, and the workflow inside proprietary software is usually kind of the same, but the workflow inside Darktable is completely different, in my opinion. So that's something that is maybe a bit hard in the beginning, but once you get and understand the workflow inside Darktable, it's really a lot better, if you ask me, than, for example, inside Lightroom. Now, Darktable is, of course, free and it's open source. And I think it's come a really long way. There's nothing I miss from Darktable uh, because I don't do sky replacements. I don't do stuff like that. I don't do content aware removal. If I want to do that, I can do that in, for example, GIMP. So yeah, Darktable is a really excellent piece of software that I do recommend, and it's available for Windows and Mac as well, so not only Linux. Okay, so let's move to the next software, and that's Art. Now, it's possible that you have heard of rawtherapee. Art is a forked project from rawtherapee. So basically, rawtherapee is going this way, but some developers decided to take the source code from rawtherapee and kind of go this way instead. That's yeah. So forking a project is simply to take the source code or the code from one project and out from that start a new project, and that's what the developers of Art has done. Now, Art isn't all that different than rawtherapee, but there are some different features compared to rawtherapee. Some people like rawtherapee more than they like Art, and some people like Art more than rawtherapee. I think I like Art more than rawtherapee. Okay, so it's really excellent. It's has a ton of features, and I can almost always get the result that I want. So let's do the next one here, and that's rawtherapee. So yeah, again, you can think of rawtherapee and Art being practically the same with only a few features that are different. I do like rawtherapee. I think it might be quicker than Art. I'm not entirely sure, but it seems so to me. So yeah, if I must choose between Art and rawtherapee, I would choose Art. but both are pretty excellent, and of course open source and available on Windows, Mac, and Linux. All right, so if you can't seem to get a decent picture out of the raw converters, or you need to make composites or anything like that, then you have GIMP. GIMP is a pixel editor, much like Adobe Photoshop or Affinity Photo, and it has quite a few features, and there's a ton of plugins and extra functions that you can download for GIMP and use. And I really do like GIMP. My logo for my YouTube channel is actually made inside GIMP. So it's a really excellent software, and you can do composites, you can do sky replacements, you can do really a lot of stuff inside GIMP. It works excellent. It's packed with features, and yeah, it's a bit hard to get into, but once you understand the workflow and understand what does what, uh, it's a really nice product that I like a lot. So if you're depending on Photoshop, if that's what holds you on Windows or Mac, maybe you should download GIMP. You can install that on both Windows and Mac and have a look. And if you like it, you might want to go replace it with Adobe Photoshop or Affinity, and then even install Linux. So just check out GIMP if you haven't done so. All right, so the next software here, yeah, Photopea. So if you if you really need Photoshop and you're used to the workflow inside Photoshop, maybe Photopea is something for you. Now you can download the Photopea web forward client on Linux, or you can simply use your browser and go to Photopea, and you can edit photos directly through Photopea, but there's no raw support, so you need to either convert it to a JPEG, PNG, or TIFF first. But if you need to do composites and stuff like that, and you're used to the look and the feel of Photoshop, go to Photopea and you can do most stuff you would want to do in Photopea. And it's free, but it's not open source, but it's free and everyone can go and use it. And you can even create an account which will save your settings and stuff like that. So yeah, check that out if you want to or have a need for something like Photoshop. The next one here is Filmulator, and it looks it doesn't look good, but it works and it does maybe what you want, and it's free, and as far as I know, it's also open source, but it's not very feature rich. But if you just want to convert RAWs, you can use Filmulator, and it's really quick to work inside, so it's pretty okay actually. So if you want to do HDR files or tone mapping, you can use Luminance HDR. You can merge files together. It's really easy to use, I find, and the results are, yeah, it's pretty good. It's not I wouldn't say excellent, but it's pretty good, and it's of course free and open source. So I think it works for Windows and Mac as well. So if you want to try it before you jump to Linux, you can do so and make up your mind then. You also have another proprietary software called Pixeluvo. And yes, that's a proprietary software, but it's pretty good actually. and you have a ton of features, and this software actually supports RAW. So in this case, I've loaded up a RAW and I've done some settings. I can hit convert to 8-bit, and now we have a 8-bit version, which means that I can use really a lot of effects here. So if I go for enhanced clarity, you can see that we are changing the micro contrast. I can go for a blur if I want to do that, or boost detail, sharpen. There's a ton of stuff I can do inside here. So it works really great. If you want to try it out, see if you like it. I like it a lot. I find it easy to use. It's logical, and there's a ton of stuff that I can use or do inside Pixeloo. So to me, it's a excellent software. It's kind of replaced Affinity Photo for me, but it's not nearly as feature rich as Affinity Photo, but it's pretty great. Okay, so I think that's all of the software I wanted to mention. Now, there is quite a few other selections of software. You have Krita, Inkscape, Rapid Photo Downloader. You have Hugin, which is a panorama stitcher. So you create panoramas with that. And you have, I can't remember. You have quite a few others, Light Zone and stuff like that, that are pretty good and absolutely worth checking out. You also have Raw Studio. It's not really feature rich, but you can use it. It works. You can do a ton of stuff. If you want to have a really quick raw photo converter, you can use Raw Studio. It works very well. So yeah, I can recommend that as well. And it's really lightweight, so you won't overload your PC. But for most part, it's really a simple software. You're just doing a raw conversion. You're not able to do anything else. So there's no features besides the raw conversion itself. But it works, and it's a great product for what it aims to be. It does what it aims to be, and I can absolutely recommend that software. So, is Linux a viable operating system for photographers? And I would say, for most part, yes, it is. It's absolutely viable. You have a lower overhead inside Linux than you have in, for example, Windows or Mac, meaning you're using less system resources, or the operating system are using less system resources. You have, for example, rawtherapee and darktable, which are both excellent softwares. And if there's anything more you need to do, or composites or stuff like that, you have GIMP, Pixeloo, and Krita. Yeah, and if you want to do HDR, you can do that as well. So if you like the workflow inside, for example, Darktable or rawtherapee, it's absolutely viable to use Linux as an operating system and replace, for example, Mac or Windows. When it comes to the operating system itself, now it is different than Windows or Mac, and there is a learning curve, but there's a learning curve for everything that's new. And the learning curve is not steep, in my opinion. It's really easy to get into Linux. It's easy to understand, and you will feel kind of at home, even though it's different, because it's close enough. So you will understand the logic inside Linux if you understand the logic inside Mac or Windows. So yeah, I do recommend Linux, but if you want to try it out, maybe you want to dual boot it or install it to a drive that you're not using and only to that drive. So basically disconnect your primary drive, the drive with the operating system, connect a drive that you can install Linux on, and try it out. See if you like it. Download Darktable, download rawtherapee, and GIMP. And if you like it, stay on it. If you don't like it, simply reattach your main drive with Windows on, and yeah, format the other drive, and you're back to your usual stuff. So it's easy to try it out, and it's available, and there's quite a few different tastes, distributions to choose from. I am using Fedora 36. I like RPM distros. Yeah, Google that. But there are Ubuntu, Arch. Arch is maybe not too recommended to start with, but Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Fedora, KDE Neon. There are quite a few different distributions to choose from. Okay, this is a long video. I just wanted to introduce Linux to those of you that don't really know anything about it. And I wanted to kind of highlight that it is indeed viable as a platform for photographers. And it's excellent. At least it's excellent in my opinion. Diehard Windows fan might think that Linux is not excellent, but that's not a debate I want to have, to be honest. I just want to highlight, is Linux any good, and is there any good software on Linux for photographers? And my conclusion is yes. So that's it for this video. Sorry, I'm talking too much maybe, but yeah. If you like the video, hit that like button. If you want to watch more from me, hit that subscribe button. And thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you again. Goodbye.